Welcome everybody to the latest BuffZone podcast. I'm Brian Howell. Please be joined by my colleague Pat Rooney. And Pat, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Survived Halloween last week with the wee ones and ready to roll for another busy weekend with the Buffs.
Yeah, I survived Halloween. I was by myself. All the family was gone, and four door knocks that night, and for a total
Yeah.
of eight trick-or-treaters. So we still got a whole bunch of candy left over. So you were joking with me. Should I bring some candy to the press box? I'm like, no, please. I've
Yeah.
got I've got all the
Well,
candy I bought to hand out.
our neighborhood was fun. So we had a couple other families we got together with their kids and tooled around the neighborhood. It was fun, but yeah, we still have too much. I might bring some to you next week.
Please don't. Um, obviously, we're going to talk a little bit basketball and other sports, but football. Um, man, this has gone off the rails quickly, hasn't it? To go from 2 weeks ago, we're talking about this team coming off of a bye, which right before that they had that nice win against then number 22 Iowa State, which has also fallen off. But the Buffs were looking pretty good 2 weeks ago, and then all of a sudden, Back to the Future, and it's 2022.
Yeah, I mean, you hate to label teams like this, but they've really seemed checked out the last two games, which is like you to your point was boggling coming out of that bye. They had the great win at home against Iowa
Mhm.
State. It's like, okay, maybe things haven't gone the way they wanted to so far, but the schedule turned. I mean, Utah is going to be a tough one regardless, but the last stretch of the schedule not really nearly as daunting as what they faced in October, and you felt like this team could maybe make a push into a bowl game. Now we're changing play callers. They're just not competitive whatsoever.
Changing
And
quarterbacks,
what's that?
changing quarterbacks.
Changing quarterbacks. And,
Yeah.
now we're, instead of rallying towards 6-6, it's looking more and more like 3-9.
Yeah, which is it's insane because not even just the Iowa State game, but I mean they had that 4 game stretch, after the Houston game where it seemed like they got right a little bit against Wyoming, and then they really probably should have beat BYU, but still they're right in there with the BYU team that currently is undefeated in top 10 in the country. They're right there with TCU, on the road, led both those games 14-0, and then you beat Iowa State, and they were right there. And yes, at 3-4 going into the bye, and you kind of I think we kind of knew they'd probably lose at Utah, but you have that 4 game November stretch. It's like, yeah, that looks very winnable. And now they come to this West Virginia game this week that even a week ago, I would have been inclined to pick a win. There's no chance you can pick a win right now. I mean, this Buffs team again looks so much like the 2022 squad that can't stop anybody and can't move the ball and can't score.
Yeah, this has been a systemic breakdown from the top down and changing play callers again. Did anyone notice a difference in the play calling against Arizona? I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah,
It's one thing to lose at Arizona. Okay, you got routed, but like you said, you're probably going to lose that game anyway. It's a tough, but to get routed at home by Arizona and to not even look like you cared about competing was just such an embarrassment. I mean, earlier this year, like you said, they went toe to toe with two teams that have a good chance of being in the playoff here
yeah,
coming up in another month plus. And then you turn around and you just get routed and boot stomped by a very mediocre Arizona team. So
yeah.
this feels like a program falling off the rails right now. We'll see how it goes these last few games, but then the change in the play, this just reeks of scapegoating to me by head coach Deion Sanders. He's done this. This is the fourth time in his 6 seasons that he's changed play callers mid-season. At some point you got to say maybe it's not the play calling.
Right. Yeah.
And
Well,
not
and
that that's I'm not defending it, but I'm saying if that repeatedly happens, maybe the issue is more you need to look in the mirror than blame the play calling.
yeah, and he's alluded to it all year about the poor execution, and he's absolutely right. And to me, I think that is the biggest problem is the poor execution, more so than the play calling. But I think at some point you got to make that play caller change. Let's just try something different. Let's see if there's some sort of a spark. But why it didn't matter is because their same issue is the execution. These guys are not playing well, and Caden Salter, the starting quarterback pretty much all year, has looked good at times, and he played really well against Iowa State. I remember according to Pro Football Focus, he came out as the highest rated passer in the country after that Iowa State game. He's been absolutely dreadful ever since. I mean, in 2 games, he's thrown for less than 100 yards combined, averaging like 4 yards of completion, which is insane. And they've had 24 points in the last 2 weeks, Pat, and 17 of them came in garbage time. So they scored 7 points, one touchdown in the run of play that actually mattered. And even then, you were down 17 nothing already to Arizona when you finally scored. So um, I don't know when Deion Sanders stands in front of him and says, "If I had the answers, I would knew. I would tell you." Um, I sort of understand that because I'm like, I don't get it either. To see where this has gone from the bye week to now is just it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, Salter is maybe a microcosm of the entire team of this kind of downturn the last few weeks. You felt like after that Iowa State game that, okay, he had some kind of growing pains, maybe
Yeah,
coming to a new level, new team, out of his comfort zone, coming out here to Colorado. Maybe at midseason, the guy has figured it out a little bit and is ready to take off down the stretch. But that's kind of the complete opposite of what has actually happened in reality. And now, I guess, one thing to look forward to this Saturday is the debut of Juju Lewis, and it's going to be interesting to see how
yeah,
they play with him. He can only play 2 more games and retain the red shirt. And this was kind of a bit of a tangent, but that was the other thing that I think he said at post game after Arizona last week that Deion Sanders said he hadn't even had a conversation with Lewis about redshirting, and I'm like, really? This whole season that hasn't come up once, especially at this stage of the season that there's only X amount of games left and you've played in two, you haven't talked about it once. Come on, man.
yeah,
But looking forward to see what the young man can do. Unfortunately, it looks like the offensive line will be beat up, and this team has not played well on the road in general.
yeah. The one defense I'll have for that. Hold on a second. Excuse me, Pat.
Gesundheit.
Um,
Gesundheit.
the one defense I'll have for that is that I really don't think they had any intention whatsoever to play him last week against Arizona, but it got so bad that they got to that point. Um, but yeah, it's really amazing because Caden Salter, the one thing while he was struggling early on was he at least was not much of a turnover guy.
Right.
He's become a turnover machine in the
Yeah.
recent weeks, and Ryan Staub as well, 0 for 2 with 2 picks last week. Julian Lewis, we'll see what he can do. I like some things last week. Obviously, the touchdown pass he threw was a really nice ball. He's not known as being a runner, but he had a nice scramble for a first down last week, and so I think he's got the ability to run. And if Brett Bartoloni really is calling plays, I'm curious to see the combination of Bartoloni and Lewis and just see what they can do. I mean, Bartoloni was Shadour's play caller during a big season at Jackson State in 2022. How much of that is Bartoloni? How much is that was Shadur Sanders? Who's a NFL quarterback playing against SWAC competition.
Yeah.
It's very different now. So we'll see.
Well, then looking at this matchup, again, we said this a couple weeks ago. Maybe this is a chance to fix the road woes. But now you go into this, your offensive line is beat up. You have a freshman making his first start at quarterback. And, you look at the stats, Colorado is, I think 15th around. They're way down there in both total offense, last in
Yeah,
defense,
15th.
and 14th in total offense. But, West Virginia is kind of middle of the pack defense, and I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing here. But West Virginia is right kind of here. I'll get the right thing so we can get our facts straight here.
I know
Colorado 15th in
15th. Yeah,
defense, 15th in offense. But West Virginia is right there with them down in the dregs in both categories. But the biggest difference is West Virginia is coming off a pretty impressive road win at Houston last week.
right.
So this is a team that's trending in the right direction going into November. And then, you take all the other factors with the Buffs, and they've been just dreadful on the road. I don't like the way this one's going to turn out, and I don't think it's going to be close. I think West Virginia wins something along the lines of 31-14.
Yeah. And even before that, they actually had a close game. They lost in overtime. No, not in overtime. but they lost it by 6 points to TCU, who's a pretty good team. So
Right.
it seems like they have figured something out. They've got a true freshman quarterback as well, Scotty Fox, who played really well. Somehow they put up 45 points last week. I mean, they haven't done that in recent weeks. Um, so honestly, the 45 was an aberration. Can they do it again against this defense? Absolutely. From what I've seen, um, Colorado's given up, 50 plus the last 2 weeks. And so, yeah, I'm with you that I don't think it'll be necessarily that big of a blowout, but I think West Virginia wins this going away. I'm gonna go 35-21, and the Buffs are a little bit more competitive, but I think it's really hard to predict a win in this game. They can absolutely win this game. They're very capable, as we've talked about, but it's really hard to project a win when they're playing the way they are. And West Virginia's coming off the game they did, and they're at home. So I think it's be hard for Coach Sanders to get this team motivated on the road.
Yeah, and we'll see if they put up a better fight. I guess that's a step in the right direction, and maybe you can do something in the last couple of games. But they've kind of just laid down the last two games, and if that happens again, like I said, this is looking more like 3-9 than a team that's going to battle out some victories down the stretch.
Yeah, well, it's crazy because a week ago we were talking about, I threw out the scenario. I'm like, look, you bounce back and beat Arizona, you can absolutely beat West Virginia, and then you can come home and beat Arizona State, and you're in a bowl game. And
Right.
now
And,
again, you're looking at it like, they're not going to win again. So,
yes, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. Even going back to the kind of weekly press conference leading into the Arizona game, the idea of flushing the Utah game and just moving on. It's like, okay, I get that. I can see, you've been, like we talked about, they've been competitive against some good teams earlier in the year. You chalk that up to a bad night against a tough foe that had it all clicking in one night, and you move on and you take care of business at home against another mediocre opponent, and then maybe you're right back in the mix. But that is not what happened at all, and this team just doesn't look ready to compete right now at all.
well, as you and I joked in the press box on Saturday, sometimes you flush the toilet and it's clogged, and you got a whole bunch of crap floating around in there, and
Right.
you got a bigger job on your hands than you thought. So I think that's what's happened is they got a clogged toilet they're trying to flush right now. So yeah, hard to see a win in this one, and sorry for the gross analogy and imagery there, but that's kind of is what it is
Anyone
right
that's
now.
anyone that's watched this team the last 2 weeks is probably grossed out anyway. So
Right, that's true. Let's move on to happier things and touch on a couple other sports real quick. Soccer they got beat on Wednesday night in the Big 12 tournament, but 2-1 against Kansas, but still they're sitting pretty for the NCAA tournament, and that's their bigger goal anyway. Is it would have been nice to win the Big
absolutely,
12 tournament, but they got bigger things ahead.
sure. Absolutely. Those pairings for the NCAA tournament will come out on Monday. Buffs are still a top 10 RPI team, and we'll play at home. We'll figure out the where. I mean, I'm sorry, the when and against whom on Monday. You know, this is pretty telling about how tough the Big 12 was this year in women's soccer. It's an 18 tournament. They only take the top 8 teams for the tournament, but it's the seventh seeded Kansas against 8th seeded BYU in the championship game on Saturday. So that tells you how tough this league is this year. Kansas scored twice in the second half to knock off the Buffs in the semifinal. Tough game. The Buffs probably weren't on their game, and Kansas is one of the few teams, excuse me, that really managed to kind of limit Hope Leba's looks. She only had 2 shots. Didn't really kind of have that kind of prime opportunity. But still more to play for. They'll definitely be in that tournament mix. We'll get a chance to play at home, and we'll see how they bounce back. Disappointing result, but this team's been pretty tough all year. I think they're still pretty well built to make a tournament run here coming up.
Yeah, in fact, CU in fact was the only top four seed to even win in the first round of that tournament. So yeah, a tough tournament over there
Right.
in the Big 12. So volleyball, they got a trip to the Kansas schools this weekend, and they're obviously rolling and playing really good volleyball right now as they look forward to the home stretch, the last month of the regular season.
Yeah, another team playing great right now. A couple tough road games coming up. We'll see. Next week will be the big one. They have a match at home against Arizona State. That's who they're kind of neck and neck with at the top of the Big 12 right now. So you pick up these road wins. and sets up a pretty big one next week at the CU Event Center. It'll be a busy week next week. We got a home basketball. We'll have home NCAA soccer. And then basketball, obviously, the men tipped off this week. Fans by now have probably heard the name Isaiah Johnson. He's been great throughout the preseason. He lit it up in the second half to kind of save them against Montana State. They'll be back in action against Eastern Washington on Saturday afternoon, kind of right around the time football's wrapping up. We'll be getting going at the event center. And then women, as we're talking, they tip off tonight against New Mexico at the event center. I'll be on the coverage of that while you are on your merry way to West Virginia. And curious to see how like the men's team, and maybe even more so, a lot of new faces on that women's team, and definitely curious to see how J.R. Payne puts it all together and how that group kind of comes together in their first test.
Yeah, and I think more experience, I think, on that women's side with the newcomers, just at different places.
Yeah.
Three all defensive team players in their previous conferences that are on this team. So it's gonna be interesting, and they got to just watching them in their exhibition last week, Pat. I mean, it's the best group of freshmen I've seen with J.R. Payne's team in a long time, and so they got some really talented freshmen. It's gonna be a fun team to watch, I think, and so um, you know. As this posts, I mean, the game will be over, but they play at Louisville next week, and then they got a game the following Sunday against Portland State. So plenty of opportunities to see them coming up. But it's gonna be a fun basketball season, and there's maybe some CU fans that are ready for basketball season. It's been a couple years since people have been ready for basketball this early in November.
Yeah, that used to be our common phrase at this time of year, like at least basketball starting. But the men
Yeah.
obviously finished last year. So I don't know how much the preseason enthusiasm there was for that team, but this freshman class is very good. Tad Boyle talked about it yesterday. If they keep this group together, it's kind of another young group to kind of build around going forward. And I think they'll surprise some teams along the way. Isaiah Johnson certainly put on a show the other night. Think we'll see more. I don't know if we'll see 24 points in one half from him, but
Yeah.
I think he's going to be kind of that next in line of point guards that they've had pretty good success with over the years. And at the very least, I think it's going to be a more interesting and entertaining and competitive team than we saw last year.
Yeah, well, if he can start scoring 24 points a half, that's going to be phenomenal because he'll be the nation's leading scorer and Naismith Award winner and all that stuff. So, yeah, that'll be fun. But Pat, have a good weekend. We'll chat next weekend. It's a bye week for football, but we'll see if this team has somehow found a way to win in Morgantown, and if not, we'll still have other things to talk about. There's going to be some good stuff with basketball and soccer and volleyball. So,
Maybe we'll be turning the page to basketball too by then.
yeah, well, have a good weekend. We'll catch up next week.
You too, Brian. Safe travels to you, my friend. And as always, folks, thanks for listening.